Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to talk today about being 26 months off benzos and antidepressants. But before I get into the actual video, I wanted to ask your opinion on something. So I know there are a few withdrawal coaches out there. Some are fairly well known, and I can think of about 4 or 5 off the top of my head. I won't mention names here, but if you're familiar with the community, you know that there's people out there who do coaching, and I'm wondering if you've had any experience with that. The reason I ask is because I myself have thought about becoming a withdrawal coach, and I'm just wanting to know if you found it helpful, sort of the pros and cons, if you've tried to just make an appointment and you didn't go through with it, or if you're a regular client or if you did a one-time thing. I'm just wondering about your feedback. I'm not really sure about the process involved in becoming a coach, but I'm just curious about your experiences. So if you could let me know in the comments if you have any, that would be greatly appreciated. So on to the video now. If you watch my past videos, you know my history. I always just like to give a really brief one here at the beginning of each video, just in case you're new here. So I took SSRIs for 7 years for a situational depression when I lost my job. Didn't actually need them because I wasn't actually mentally ill. And then I came off them under medical supervision in 2018. I had a ton of symptoms, but I didn't attribute it to withdrawal because I didn't know there was such a thing for antidepressants. Suffered for about 2.5 years and then decided that I must be mentally ill, even though I'm having all these symptoms I'd never had prior to the medications. So I reinstated my original SSRI at a low dose and got akathisia. I was then polydrugged and put on benzos, and then I was cold turkeyed off the benzos because it went paradoxical, and I ended up with severe uncontrollable involuntary movements and the whole thing. So it's been a very long journey for me. I am now 26 months off everything, and I just want to kind of recap where I'm at now. So I will link above my symptoms video. I have made a video in the past about all the symptoms that I've had, probably at least 30 symptoms. But what I'm left with now, mostly only in waves, is sometimes a little bit of insomnia, but that's quite rare. Some anxiety, akathisia, and intrusive thoughts. When I took those drugs, or when I first came off them, I didn't have windows. I was in suffering basically every waking moment, and it wasn't until about 6 months off that I had my first window, and it was like an hour long. And then as time has went on, the windows have gotten longer and the waves have gotten shorter. And I really felt like I turned a corner in November of 2022. So I came off these drugs the second time in February of 2021, November of 2022. So about 21 months off was when I felt like I started to turn a corner. I wasn't symptom free, but I really noticed very distinct windows and waves. And I would have days, or like a day or full days, where I would feel 95% myself. And it really was very obvious windows and waves from that point to now. And now, like, I can go 2 weeks with very few symptoms, and then I'll go back into a wave. So if you watched my last batch of videos, I just want to say that I usually do batch film. So I'll film 4 or 5 videos in a day, but I will schedule them further out. So if you watched my mental symptoms video, I actually filmed that video. It was about 2.5 weeks ago. And if you notice, I think it was in that video, or one of the ones close to that one, where I was kind of scratching my face, and I had mentioned that I was feeling sort of tingling and like nerve feelings in my face. I thought it was just stress coming up in my body from talking about the symptoms, but what happened was, a couple of days later, actually the next day, I started to feel sick. Like I had eye pain, my eyes were all swollen, I had a really bad headache, and then like 2 days after that, or a day after that, I had a full-blown cold. And I haven't been sick since I've gotten akathisia. I have taken antibiotics a couple of times since I've had akathisia, but those ended up being pretty much all false alarms, and what it actually was nerve pain in my face, which I thought was a sinus infection. But this one was a legitimate cold. Like I had congestion, I couldn't breathe, I was coughing, I had a sore throat, I was chilled, and people who talk to me are like, man, you sound terrible. And everyone in my house was sick. So it actually was a virus. And I think because after I made that mental symptoms video, I went into a wave and was really sick. So if you have messaged me on Facebook or Instagram and said, hey, how are you doing? And I said, oh, not good at all, and they're like, oh, well, because people were saying, I just saw your video where you said, you're doing so well. That's because it was filmed earlier, and then because I batch filmed them, and then by the time they asked me, I had already gotten sick and went into this wave. So I was sick for about a week, and maybe not even a week, it was maybe 5 days, and I really noticed my symptoms get a lot worse during that time, and it really scared me. Even though at a gut level I knew it was just a wave, I knew that a lot of people experience this when they're sick and they have drug problems or withdrawal problems. And so I knew that at a gut level, but I was still kind of freaking out because my severe mental symptoms, if you've watched my mental symptom video, you know how bad my mental was, and it was coming back full force during this cold or whatever type of virus I had. And it really scared me because it's just so, this process is just, it's so torturous, not just because of the symptoms, but because anything can throw you back and then you don't know how long that's going to last. And so people, like I said, people were asking me, hey, how are you doing? I just saw your video. And I'd say, oh, I'm doing terrible. And they're like, well, you just posted a video yesterday that said you were doing great. Like, what's going on? Yeah, well, I filmed that, 2.5 weeks ago, and now here I am now. And I just happen to have gotten sick in the meantime, and I'm in a wave now. So my 4 symptoms from like the original 30 are kind of what I have left. And like I said, they come in windows and waves. Windows are a lot longer. The waves are a lot shorter and less intense than they were like a couple of years ago or even several months ago. So the 4 that I'm left with, like I said, are kind of insomnia, anxiety, akathisia, and intrusive thoughts. And they're a much milder level for the most part when I'm in a wave than they used to be. But in akathisia, I kind of umbrella all of the nerve symptoms. So nerve shocking, burning head to toe, the dystonic kind of muscle jerking, overstimulation feeling, the vibrations, the kind of exploding in the chest feeling, in the stomach, those kind of spasms, squeezing, the head squeezing. I kind of lump that all in akathisia. And like also, the inability to sit down, the inability to rest, the involuntary kicking of the legs, like all of that I umbrella into akathisia. So whether you classify it as inner, outer, subjective, objective, it's all under that umbrella for me. So that's what I'm left with. And unless I have a pretty specific trigger now, like sickness, stress, or not getting enough sleep, I don't really experience these symptoms a lot. And when I do, like I said, it's only those 4 out of like the original 30. So pretty scary. Like I went into that wave from the sickness shortly after I made that mental symptoms video. I was sick for about 5 days, like really sick, and I had pretty extreme withdrawal symptoms during that. But now that I've kind of come out of that wave again, I just look back and I'm like, okay, it's still following that typical pattern. Have a trigger, go into a wave, it always gets better. Even though when you're in it, you just cannot see out of it. You cannot see out. And like my first withdrawal, when I first came off antidepressants the first time, I never got a single window. And I attribute a lot of that to the fact that I wasn't really taking care of myself. I was still drinking alcohol. I was still, taking over-the-counter medications. I was just careless, like with my nervous system, and just my self-care was really poor. So I attribute it to why I never got a window for like the first 2.5 years. And then the first 6 months after my reinstatement and subsequent withdrawal, it took 6 months to get a 1-hour window. So, but now it's like yesterday, for instance, was Easter Sunday. So I'm not sure what it'll be when I post this, but yesterday was Easter Sunday, and I know I walked about 45 minutes outside with my daughter in the sun, walking, at a pretty quick pace, and then spent the day with family, celebrations, and I really didn't have any symptoms at all day. I wasn't even thinking about withdrawal. I wasn't thinking about, which is incredible to me, because for the first year especially of this last withdrawal, which was by far worse than my first withdrawal, I couldn't imagine not having symptoms every second of the day. So it's just incredible how the body, and if you are familiar with the forums, they talk about how, oh, there's healing going underneath, even if you don't feel it, even if you don't get windows. And I was like, that's a bunch of crap. But now that I've experienced it, I really believe that to be true, because it was just like something switched for me in November, and now I get very clear windows and waves, long windows, short waves, even though they can still be intense, and they usually have a defining trigger, usually, not always. But that's where I'm at now. I have a lot of hope for the future. So if you're still early on, you don't get any windows, or you just cannot see this ever changing, I'm telling you it does. Just like other people say it does, it does. And like I asked earlier on in the video, if you've had any experience with withdrawal coaches, let me know. I'd love to know your experience, just so I can kind of feel it out and see whether or not I want to pursue that in the future or not. But take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.